Hey everyone, I got the dark theme going because it is uh not yet a month past Halloween, which means I can still do something a little creepy in a way. This video is David Applewhite and Heaven's Gate. Now, I'm gonna say just first that David Applewhite is a very like core figure in my like sort of story of Christian spiritual history and Christian history. Like, I think he's just as important as any of the biggest names besides the man himself. I do believe that. So you have to understand him and why he was. So hard to say. It's hard to say someone was wrong when he was true to himself. So not why he was wrong, but why you would be wrong to do what he did, especially just because he did it. He would tell you that. That's what's wrong. He made his choice. And it's like asking, did Jesus have a right to commit suicide? Well, he meant what he said, and he was true to his values, and he was true to his beliefs. He could have just not died, but that wasn't what he was. That's not what he wanted to do. So, I'm gonna just preface this with talking about. I just want to kind of just start at the end of the story, just so that you can kind of get a feel for like what we're getting into here. Heaven's Gate, if to people who don't know, it's the cult that killed them. They committed, mass suicide in I believe San Diego. God, what in like in the late '90s for the Hale-Bopp comet. I think it was 98, 97. And there's I think two, maybe a little more surviving members from Heaven's Gate, and they will still respond to emails and stuff if they're honest and respectful. And if I could have anyone, if I could have anyone who knew David Applewhite on this thing on my channel, like I don't even know what I could say. Like, you would be treated with nothing but respect. I would never cast the first stone at you. I would never cast the first stone at you, Heaven's Gate. But I would criticize you because I respect you and I know that you went your own way and I go mine, and that's fine. And so this is for, most people. The road to salvation is narrow, and, we all have our own narrow roads. Yours is very, very narrow. Very narrow. David knew. So that's why it's like, yeah, I'm going to criticize them, but you have to understand that the only people who ever make anything meaningful in the world are the people who mean what they say and stand by their values, instead of just being, just a grifter. So Applewhite wasn't a grifter, and neither was Jesus Christ. Neither was Siddhartha Gautama, Confucius, Muhammad. This is what inspires people, is when you at least, it doesn't even matter if you're right. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. Of course, do I have to say it? I'm sorry to Heaven's Gate people, okay? Obviously, the mythology aspect about Hale-Bopp is made up. Duh. Like, okay, do I have to say it? Okay, I said it. But it's like, yeah, sure. But what was the meaning of it? That's what you need to understand. And that's why you don't just write them off and never listen to them again. You have to listen to David Applewhite very, very, very carefully if you, like I get emotional. If you want to understand anything about modern humanity, postmodern humanity, I see David Applewhite as a tribute to the people broken by postmodern modernity. But a true tribute, like a Christ-like tribute, like a sacrifice, really, a sacrifice in a way. Not like a metaphysical way, but like he died because of the weight on his shoulders. He was like a lion who became. He's like aggressive at converting, but then also aggressive at deconverting. He was aggressive with both. He would very lightly convert you with charisma and then aggressively deconvert you with logic and argument and everything like that. If you weren't following him like they followed Jesus, he didn't want you to follow him. You know? As far as, you know, so now with that said, guys, as is the theme with this channel is about the spoken word. And I write sci-fi when I do the written word. What the spoken word means to me is that it's not based on writing, so you can't look anything up. Like, that's cheating. Because the real impact that real humans have on the world is how they live through memories, like their living memory and the living inspiration and influence that they have on real people, like you live on through others. So that's why, you know, once you understand Heaven's Gate, you understand why it's important and not important at the same time, right? Irrelevant and incredibly important at the same time. That's religion for you. And people who don't understand religion think it's irrelevant. And to all you people who think that religious wars are just that, religious wars, first of all, you should just read about Yugoslavia and Tito, because Tito is, you have to read about Tito. But, you know, I'm not even a fan of communists, and I'm a fan of Tito. That's something, you know, that's an achievement. So, not a fan, of course, but, you know, I mean, he was the best version of himself, okay? I'll say that. If you believe religious wars are just made up, look up the difference between a Bosnian and a Serb. It's not race, it's not language, it's not how they look, it's not how they behave, it's not how they do anything. It's only whether or not, only. They act, everything's the same, except whether or not they go to a mosque and a church. And they're genociding. It's breaking down literally right now as we speak. So, it's the same ethnic group killing each other because of religion. And it's like, you can't tell me that that's meaningless and that it's all just economics, or it's all just race, or it's all just this. It can't all be anything, you know? That's it. I think like I've established that much. I don't know much, but I know that it can't all be anything. So, you know, it all is everything. Like, it all just is in a way. So, perfect intro to the David Applewhite. It'll be a series, not a saga, because like I said, it's living memory. And I don't know that much about the guy, but I know what he meant to me. And that's the only thing that matters, because who cares? The point is, this is what I believe, guys. You know the whole thing of like, oh, if you burned every Bible ever, you know, Christianity would never exist again. That's not true at all. You'd have to kill every Christian. And it's the same with David Applewhite. So what I focus on is what's the real thing, not the written part. The written part is like an anchor. Why did David Applewhite need an anchor? He's out of here. What's an anchor for? It's a one-time job. So it's like, yeah, of course. So I respect that and understand that, and that's why I don't want to read about him, because you had to know him, and I want to talk like God, knowledge and truth. It's always about who you know. That's why I say, like, repeating thing of the channel. If you want to judge Trumpers, if you want to judge BLM, if you want to judge cops, if you want to judge Muslims, if you want to judge anybody, if you want to judge, especially, if you want to judge transgender people, no matter what it is, I only humbly request that you at least get to know a monster before you cast the first stone. And then once you know one, please, then you come talk to me about the stereotype. But it's a really big filter. Trust me. Hey, that group you hate, you've met a lot of good Samaritans, and yet you still hate Samaria. Or whatever it was called. What? Was it even Samaria? It doesn't matter. That's the whole point. Because the meaning is there. So I guess I'll end it with like a little Good Samaritan little like offshoot because, it's relevant to people who Heaven's Gate. A lot of people cast the first stone at Heaven's Gate. In fact, even other Christians like hate, I'm going to go into how I was taught about Heaven's Gate like by very, very, very fundamentalist, creationist, evangelical Christians, because that's the middle school only that I went to. So, I know all those people, and that's why I know the Amish, because I went there and all that. So, once you understand how to talk to these people, you realize that there's a lot of good Samaritans, and the good Samaritan is not the rudest guy in your town who looks like you. The Good Samaritan is the transgender, black, BLM chick, stand-in chick, whatever, chick guy, whatever you want to call it. It probably. Standing on the corner. That's the Good Samaritan. Or the black guy waving a Confederate flag. Being, or, yeah. The black guy waving the Confederate flag gets profiled, I feel like, and you gotta just be like, hey, you don't know who is and who isn't a Good Samaritan. You don't know them, so who do you know? That's why we're gonna get to know David Applewhite. He wasn't a written word kind of guy. He was, so I'm gonna not like written really. Like I want to just focus on what he said. We can we can listen to recordings and stuff because that's more like live. He was a lot like the Amish where they don't write anything down because they believe God is a living thing. And they believe in the Bible, but they believe that it's kind of like, it's a lot like Muslims where it's kind of like, sure, but we don't need to like keep writing because we have, it's done. So they believe that God now like only exists. You don't have to like write about it anymore because it's all in the Word. And so you can just kind of like, oh, well, who was this Muslim or who was this Christian? Well, just who were they? Like get to know them. And so that's what we're doing. It's gonna be if you're into cults, guys, Jim Jones and Scientology, they're just a bunch of bags of shit, right? Everyone knows they're just a bag of shit. And then you think, oh, Heaven's Gate, another suicide cult. That's another bag of shit. And then you start to be like, oh, wait. Once again, just don't cast the first stone. Do you cast the first stone at Scientology? I mean, I think most Scientologists are just fine people. I have no problem with most Scientologists. I don't. But I think, I think L. Ron was a bit of a L. Ron was, I mean, like L. Ron Hubbard, like I would have been friends with the guy, but I would have thought that he also was not a good person. And I'll leave it with that. And I would have kept a distance from him. But I do still like I don't have a problem with someone just because they're a Scientologist, but I don't like Scientology. And then Jim Jones, yeah, I have a huge problem with Jim Jones, and I don't have a problem with the people he murdered. That's kind of like the same way. And L. Ron, God, who knows if he murdered somebody? I mean, maybe, but he did some other stuff to people. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology, once you're for sure not going to get all cultified, you should read L. Ron Hubbard's like manifesto on how to get people to join your cult. He was very open about it. Like, oh, hey, I'm joining a cult just to get rich and make a bunch of money and get famous and also like make people happy because they believe in a bunch of shit, basically. And people were like, oh, cool. So you should read. You really need to understand how religion works and why Scientology, it's just a cult because it hasn't gotten big enough to break yet. But if L. Ron Hubbard was born 500 years ago, there'd be a lot of Scientologists disagreeing about the man. They probably wouldn't even agree on what even happened on the boat and why he was in international waters all the time. They'd be like, oh, maybe it was just because he liked to fish. But right now it's a cult because there's canon. So, let's rock, people.